Hello again, everybody. Good quarantine to you. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. If you're watching this in the future, this is being filmed in April 2020 amidst the COVID-19 quarantine that we're in. So we're focusing on summer steelhead flies because by the time we're out of here and can get back on the river, that's really going to be our main fare, I think. Today we're going to be doing a cool little fly called the Redneck Revenge. This is a fly by Marty of Little Creek Outfitters. Oops, that's not quite in there enough. If you're unfamiliar with Marty, you can check him out, littlecreekoutfitters.com. Sandy River, Deschutes, John Day. They do some really cool camp stuff in the summer. And of course, winter steelhead on the Sandy River. Check them out. Okay, so we've got a gold 2055 Daiichi hook in size 5. And I'm using a fluorescent red flat wax Danville thread. I'm going to get my thread started there, and then we're going to trap in some small red wire as our rib, and we're going to take our thread body back just into the bend, just past the point of the hook there. Is what I like to do. Now we're going to build up a little bit of a thread body, covering up any of the hook that still is showing through or any of your ribbing material. Keeping it nice and even there. This is a fun pattern. Red is a special color for me in steelhead fly fishing. I find it's a great color to follow behind people if you're fishing with your friends. Red's a great pocket picking color, or full sun on the Deschutes is a great time to pull out some red if you're sticking with the dry line and using fly. You could throw this fly on a sink tip as well midday, sure. I'm gonna rib up the body. Not super concerned with how many turns I just did there. And I'm gonna tie this off on the bottom side of the hook. Since we're using this flat wax thread, it's easy to build up thread bulk, and I don't want that. Trim that off using my little cheap dollar pair of side cutters that you can get at places like Harbor Freight. Okay, we're going to tie that in. And now I'm going to modify this a little bit. On Marty's pattern, originally he has a floss tail. I'm going to, and I believe it's the same Danville flat wax that you'd be using. I'm going to take some pheasant tippet dyed red just to give some variation to this. And we're going to kind of clump some of these fibers together into a tail. A long tail. You want the long fibers, you want the bigger feather with the longer fibers. I'm going to trim a clump off of either side of this feather. Trying to keep the tips even. You could stack it if you needed to. That's, I mean, It's not horrible. It's not quite what I want, but it's not horrible. And we're gonna have a tail just past the length of our body material here, just past it. Okay, we can even, I want this thing to kind of stick up, so I'm going to take and do a wrap behind, pull forward, and go, just to kind of get this thing really sticking up there. Remembering not to build up too much thread bulk with this floss we're using to tie here. That's pretty good. I'm not too worried about some of these stragglers. You could go a little denser if you needed to. This is pretty sparse. I don't think it's gonna be too big of a problem. Okay, next we're gonna dub on our body. Just a small little dubbing body, and I'm gonna use black peacock ice dub, working in small amounts so as not to accidentally crowd our head. Just gonna dub a small amount on there and go from there. We're gonna get the body kind of built up, dub a little more. Working in small batch like this allows you to have better control over proportions. I'm gonna have a little bit more here. We want just a little more body to that. This ought to finish it out nicely. And there you go. Just a sparse little body. You could take your toothbrush or what have you and brush that out to get it a little more spiky. That's fine. If you've got some seal fur dubbing, that would be even better for this kind of application. These wet flies, I prefer if you have legally obtained seal fur. There's just some real magic in there. It's very translucent and spiky. So now we're going to tie in our hackle. Tying in by the tip a red dyed guinea feather. And pull that tip back and kind of secure it in, trim it out. And we're going to carefully hackle this feather on. And these are fairly stiff fibers, so I'm going to take either the blade of your scissors or the, I've got a lance here that I'm going to run along the stem of the feather to kind of unmarry everything and help train the fibers of the feather back. Looks like I'm coming close to pulling this thing out, so let's give it a couple more securing wraps. Don't want that to happen. And I'm even going to have to grab my hackle plier there. And we're going to just hackle on our body. Let's get thread kind of out of the way. I'm going to try and train these fibers of the feather back as we hackle on. That first wrap's always pretty crucial, where you make or break the feather there. We're just going to try and get probably no more than 2 or 3 full turns of this on there, stroking everything back, keeping it nice and even, one wrap in front of the other. I need to leave room for one more material. I think we're about done there. That ended up being a very cooperative guinea fowl feather. This is not usually the case. Wiggling your thread through, get a couple wraps there to trap that stem down, and we can carefully trim it out. Pulling everything back and just beginning a small head. And at this point, you really have to be kind of economic with how many turns of this thread you're doing up in the head there. We've got one more material to put in and then build up an actual head. And I'm not one that likes big, gaudy, shiny heads on my flies, so I'm trying to keep it small. This size that you see here would actually be perfect if I were done. Our next material is going to be some red dyed squirrel tail. I'm going to throw it in my hair stacker just to give it, and we want some long stuff. We want this gonna, our wing's gonna come into the back portion here with the tail a little bit. Squirrel makes excellent hair wing material. If you had some other calf tail would work, I suppose. If you had some dyed in red, actually was able to pull that out in a nice little clump that doesn't need stacking, so get rid of some of this under fluff. I'm going to even up the back end here for tying it in, and we're going to lay this on top and try and get this so that I can not bury the eye of the hook in this stuff. Get a couple loose wraps on there and then start securing it in. We're really trying to not let go of that squirrel until it's good and secured in. There we go. Our eye is still exposed. I may have crowded this a little bit, so we're really going to be kind of careful with how many whip finishes we do here. If you, in the end, do have a bulky head, that's not a problem. There's a couple things you could do. I could have swapped over to a smaller diameter thread halfway through the tying process, and that smaller thread would be a little bit easier for this. But as long as it's not so massive of a head that you have a fly swimming funny, I think you're all right. The steelhead won't usually judge you for it. There we go. We have Marty Shepard's Redneck Revenge. Kind of flared that out a little bit. I hope you enjoy.